What's up? What's up? What's up, everybody? Welcome to the I Am Alpha podcast, season 3.
Yay.
You're the first.
Oh gosh.
You're the first.
No pressure.
My friend Margaret is in the building with you guys. For everybody that's on, thank you for joining. Share with your family and friends. If you know Margaret, this is where you share with everybody that knows her.
Oh my gosh.
She works out at 6 a.m. sometimes, very rare.
Rarely now.
9 a.m.s on Saturdays, 9:30s,
Yes.
and 5 o'clock typically, and all the evening classes. But Margaret, besides your name, give them the 30, 45-second spill. Where are you from? Did you go to school, and where at, and where y'all play this weekend? And what do you do?
My name is Margaret. I'm from Houston, but I went to school in North Carolina, University of North Carolina to be exact, and we play
They do
Duke
play.
on Saturday.
It's a big game.
So
She's going to give me tickets.
It's been stress-inducing all week, but it's going to be great. And I'm going, actually, so I'm excited.
I'm going to.
And then, what was the other thing?
She didn't say yes.
I already have someone going with me. Wait, name. Oh, what I do. So I work for a consulting company, and I do professional development for them.
And how did you get into that?
It's actually a new job as of November. So it was really kind of through networking.
Really?
Someone recommended me for the job, and then I interviewed for it, and then here I am.
How long?
How long?
You been doing that?
Since November. So
Since
I've been doing
November.
that, and then before
Oh,
that,
yeah, okay.
before that, I worked
remember.
at Rice University, the
I remember
business
that.
school, recruiting for them.
So did you and Wes ever come across paths at Rice? Really?
Well, I found out Wes works at Rice, and then sometimes I would like see him from afar,
Really?
like walking to his building.
I'm gonna have to get him on here. I never knew Wes did what he did. So he's different at the gym. So I can't
Yes.
imagine him being that way at the university. So no, Margaret, I want to jump right into it, man. So Margaret and I've been knowing Margaret, goodness, for a long time.
Yeah, like 6 years.
6 years.
-ish? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Right when we opened the first gym, around that time.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit before.
A little bit after.
Little bit
so I
after.
was doing boot camp
Okay.
with Milton.
Uh-huh.
Hi, Milton.
Shout out to Milton. Milton, are you on? Margaret said hi if you're here.
Milton was actually my first trainer with like the Mean Green.
He said, that's my friend.
Yeah, so I did boot camps with him for like a year before I came to the gym.
Yeah. So what's cool about this, a lot of people that join us from the I Am Alpha, they know I am a trainer or I'm a leader in the fitness community, but they don't necessarily know me as Mean Green. They know me as Chris. So it's going to be really cool, obviously, to connect with you and for you and everyone else that's on to see this side. So I think you might be the third person out of the first going into the third season that has actually been from Mean Green.
Oh, okay.
So this is going to be pretty cool. So last thing I have for you before we go into what we're going to talk about. Are you working out today? What's the game plan?
Yeah, I'm working out at 5.
At 5 o'clock. All right. So I got to be nice to her because she's working out on a spicy hump day.
I am.
And for those that don't know what spicy hump day is, you just have to come to experience it. All right. So today, this series that we're doing, we're highlighting women. All right, so the I Am Alpha is basically built upon men learning how to communicate with other men, women like yourself, and also society. It's a nonprofit that I never knew I was going to be leading, and now it's one of the most passionate things I have the access to do. So the series, I wrote it down. Subject title is Successful, Powerful, Beautiful, Unstoppable, and She's a Woman. I really want to dive into everything that I just mentioned, but the thing we talked about off camera was anxiety and depression and how that's aligned with identity. I didn't give her any questions.
I don't know what he's going to ask
She
me.
didn't give me any questions. We're just going to genuinely, authentically express either what we've been through or what we've seen outside looking in. But that's the I Am Alpha. I want to see things in your perspective as a woman that I've never seen or would see, and then vice versa. So it's totally cool. I can ask the questions, but I would love if you have a question, definitely shoot it back to me at the same time. And for everybody that's on live, we love questions. It makes the podcast more interesting.
Mhm.
So down below from everybody that's on, hey Wendy, Badass Bobby's on, Christian's on. For everybody, got to jump on a meet and see y'all at 5. That's new. For everybody that's on, definitely give us a question when we bring something up that you may have questions
Mhm.
on, or you think we can elaborate a little bit more on. All right, who starts? Me or you?
You
You.
ask
I
me
kind of I kind of
first.
host the podcast,
Yeah,
so I
so
kind of got
you
to
should
talk about it.
start.
All right, so with let's start with anxiety.
Okay.
As a, I think both with anxiety and depression and
Mhm.
identity,
Mhm.
I think as a man, that's one of the things we don't publicly, openly talk about.
Mhm.
So saying anxiety, I was thinking about that on the way here, Margaret,
Mhm.
and I began to imagine the times that I've dealt with it.
Uh-huh.
Imagine the times that I had communication with people that also deal with it. And for some reason, it's not a subject that you hear a lot about.
Mhm.
You know, obviously people don't go live when they're dealing with it on social media.
Mhm.
A couple of people,
Okay.
Kanye and a couple other people. But what do you think from a woman outside looking at for men? Why do you think men don't open up about dealing with things like anxiety?
That's a great question. I think so. I have two brothers, so I didn't grow up with any sisters,
Okay.
and so I think growing up, just in general, that wasn't talked about a whole lot,
Mhm.
especially like from a male perspective. And I think later I found out like I have siblings that have struggled with that. Um, Maybe I don't know. I don't want to say it's like a pride thing, but I think it's just like a thing for men, and I could be
Mhm.
wrong. Of like I want to seem like in control or not weak or
Mhm.
whatever. And so therefore, like I don't want to show this
Yeah.
side. I also think people don't really I know for me for the longest time, I didn't really understand like what anxiety meant. Like I didn't understand if I'm stressed, does that mean I'm struggling with anxiety? Does that
Mhm.
mean I'm anxious? And so I think even just understanding
So what is your definition of anxiety for you? Because we're all different, right?
yeah, so that let me backtrack. So about like 3 years ago, I started just me being an extrovert, started feeling like very anxious about a lot of things.
Okay.
And there were just like a lot of different things happening in my life personally that were causing me to kind of like become recluse. And it just like wasn't really in line with my personality. And I would kind of like shut off and
Okay.
just feel very like my body would feel hot and like just all these different things about like anything in life like
Yeah.
and just always thinking about what could go wrong instead of like and that so that wasn't supernatural to me and that was really weird and so but I didn't know what was happening. I thought it was
Mhm.
just like a season of life. I thought it was just stress in some ways and maybe that um, was the cause of some of it. um, but when I started going to like counseling and therapy and all that kind of stuff, um, one of the things she told me was like, I think you're struggling a little bit with like
Mm.
anxiety.
Mm.
And I think that a lot of different things that have happened in the last couple of years have been the cause of
Hmm.
that. So, I for me, it's like when I get just like un like anxious in ways that are not normal or
Yeah.
anxious about like really small things that and I have a intense reaction to things that are don't
Yeah.
constitute an intense reaction.
Man, it's thank you first. That's I think everybody would probably admit and tell me you agree or you disagree. It's it's it takes bravery to open up
Mhm.
and to explain and to express that you or I
Mhm.
have been through something. As you said that, you said a lot of things that's key to me that I fell short of.
Mhm.
One of the things she said was a therapist.
Mhm.
The times I've dealt with anxiety or depression, that's the thing I felt short of
Mhm.
was not seeking wise counsel, which I
Mhm.
believe in. And it's really the reason why I asked you, what do you think a man thinks when
Mhm.
it comes to anxiety? Because I want to know your perspective, right? That's the I am
Yeah.
alpha. I would like to tell you what Chris feels. And I don't know, fellas, you tell me if you agree or disagree as well. But for me, it's programming, 100%.
Mhm.
It's I'm the man. I can get through this, or tomorrow will be better, right? And I kind of get a shaky voice. Yeah, you hear my shaky voice as I talk about it?
Kind
Kind of.
of.
So I'll tell you an experience. 2020. This is literally 3 weeks before the shutdown. 2 weeks. No,
Yeah.
3 weeks. Somewhere around there. After Super Bowl. All right. Went to Las Vegas. Had a great time. Right. And I remember this lady on the plane next to me. She's she's coughing. And I'm like, dude, why is she sitting next to me? You know, if you remember, this is
Yeah.
pre-COVID.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, in China, and everybody's like, it's going to come to America and all these things are going to happen. And here I am on an airplane. So I come home, and then I have this pain that I've never felt in my throat before. So initially it's like, crap. Did I bring COVID to America? Am I the first case, right?
The individual.
Right? So you start playing these thoughts. And I think my anxiety, honestly, I think it was developed there because you got to remember that was, what, 2 years ago almost?
Yeah.
That means the twins were 2 years younger. So I'm trying to protect the household. I'm coming to the gym. So I'm worried, am I pushing something on to other people? So I think it honestly began there. And then when I finally, after 3 days of pain, it became like numb where I couldn't swallow. My right side of my eardrum just hurt. So I finally built up the confidence. I was brave. I finally went to the doctor, things I don't always do. And he swabbed me. He's like, oh, you have strep throat. I was like, okay, that's good. But what is strep throat?
Yeah.
I never had it. And Margaret, it was so painful. And I just, first thing I asked him as a father, as a friend, as a son, I was like, is this contagious? And he was like, yes. Call Mama Bear. That's Tina. Tina, what's up? And I was like, yo, I'm getting in a hotel. She was like, yeah. I thought she was going to talk me out of it. But she was like, yeah, so getting a hotel start, I believe, building more anxiety because now I'm putting myself in a place where no one's near.
Yeah.
And it got to a point where I couldn't swallow at all. So I went to CVS and bought a numb medicine just so I can swallow. And it was tough because I would finally go to sleep. But guess what happens when you sleep?
Yeah.
You swallow naturally. And I would wake up. So after the second day of not sleeping, it was like anxiety, insomnia, it all just mixed in together. And that's the first time I literally remember saying, crap, I'm having an anxiety attack. It was like in the middle of the night. No one was around. I had no help. I had no one to turn to. And I felt like I had no control over anything. And I just start like literally fidgety, shaking. And at that moment, every time someone mentioned they dealt with anxiety, I just felt so convicted for not being more passionate about, or compassionate, excuse me, about their life sequence. So I wanted to definitely publicly say that I've dealt with it because it's not a thing that, again, men open up with, but I wanted you to know, bro or sis, that you're not alone.
Yeah, I think it can be an awkward thing to talk about because, again, like I said, like some people don't understand it, and I think there's different levels, right? So, I mean, there are people that like are clinically diagnosed that like need medication, and then there are people that aren't, that may not be on medication for it, but need to put like certain boundaries or certain systems in place to prevent / help that. And I think it just can be really confusing, and I think in certain cultural contexts as well, can be an issue as to why people don't talk about it, men or women, honestly, just because like you weren't, like you, depending on the situation that you grew up in, you could have either been taught like, this is life, you need to pick yourself up, or like you need to learn how to figure these things out. Like if you didn't grow up in a context where there was a lot of like, I guess, community help for certain things, or it was very isolating, like you just like don't even know how to go about that. I know for me, in my like family, like people don't really talk about like anxiety or depression or just like certain things like that. That wasn't a thought. Like therapy was not like a huge thing.
You think that's a black community thing, or?
I do think it is heavily prevalent in the black community. I don't know about other communities, but that like therapy was just like a very taboo thing. Like honestly, I didn't hear about anyone in counseling or therapy until I was like in college, and so like that was never like a thought of something that I would ever do in my life. And then usually it was one of those things of when something's like really bad,
Yeah.
you know, you do those things, or you wait till something gets really bad.
Yeah.
Which
Because therapy can also be a case of prevention, right?
right, like
It doesn't have to
maintenance.
be
Exactly.
when things are hitting the fan. I just
Exactly.
wanted to add that in.
Yeah, and so and I think sometimes, you know, that's a whole thing, a different thing I'm passionate about, but I think sometimes if we did those things earlier, we can prevent some of these other things that happen
Yeah.
later because we'd have the tools to prevent them. But yeah, I just think sometimes it can be really confusing, because it was confusing for me. Like I remember when the first time I had like, you know, an anxiety attack or kind of like a panic attack
Mm-hmm.
was during COVID, and like the start of COVID, and I didn't like know what was happening. Like I didn't know what was happening.
Yeah.
And so I thought like I was like I was sick or something, and so I had, long story short, like happened in the middle of the night. My roommate at the time took me to urgent care because I like didn't know. I was like,
Yeah.
I'm having, you know, something's happening. And, you know, they were the ones that told me, like, I think you might just be having like a panic attack or something like that. And so, but I didn't know.
Yeah.
No one had ever explained that to me.
Yeah.
I didn't know, you know, a lot of people
Yeah.
that was happening to.
Well, I think too, Margaret, and anybody, again, I'm about to look at the comments. If you have any questions or want to add something in that you want me to,
And I'm no
declare.
expert, by the way. This
Yeah.
is just vibe.
No, but
I
this,
don't.
that's the purpose, right? So I'm hoping, I'm praying, Margaret, that this video comes across from the person that has the same thoughts that you and I had prior to dealing with that, because I didn't know I knew what a therapist was growing up, but I never once in my life until maybe I got 25, 30 years old, where someone in high school was like, hey, I had therapy yesterday, or I have a therapist because I went through this. And I've been through, like, I lost my best friend to murder that I lived with across the street with for 21 years. And like that probably should have been something that I could have talked to somebody about.
Yeah.
But it's not that my father or my mother or my brothers and my sisters that were older than me didn't tell me. It was just, that's what I was asking you, is that a culture thing typically or sometimes with a race? Because I guess it just wasn't something that wasn't brought to our attention.
Yeah.
And I'm for getting advice, especially from people that's dealt with it. You know, if you've been in the mud before, it's a little bit easier to teach someone how to get out. And I'm just hoping that this platform is an opportunity where people can hear from us. So good with that.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. Let me see. Before I say that, I want to make sure. Thanks for sharing this. One time, Wendy on therapy. I love me some therapy. What up, Money Dane? He said it literally saved his life, especially during the pandemic. They love you, Margaret.
Oh,
Society doesn't
y'all are
make it
sweet.
acceptable for men to show any sorts of emotion. You know what, Wendy? I would like to say something about that,
Okay.
because sometimes when, especially growing up, I played sports, and crying was a sense of weakness, right? And I'm not saying go around boo-hooing about everything, but I remember being so upset, Margaret. I was talking to this girl named Princess. So Princess, if you hear this, I was in 6th grade, and I had some Gangsta Nike shoes on, and I like Princess, and this guy stepped on my shoes, and excuse me, backwards. I stepped on his shoes.
Yeah.
And he turned around and punched me so hard. It wasn't even like a jab, guys. It was like a roundhouse. But, you know, anybody ever had a fight, when people roundhouse, it never connects. But this one, Margaret, it connected. And he hit me so hard, I wanted to cry. But everybody was around. And the way that movies and cartoons, everything that I've ever seen, I would have been weak at that moment if I'd have cried.
Yeah.
So I remember like just going at it and fighting and everything else. But I think that built upon more things in life where I didn't at times, especially like for me and my faith, sometimes when I hear worship songs, it's at my place of peace. And sometimes I can't control tears of joy. But for years, I thought that was weak because potentially of one moment. So I do agree with you, Wendy. Society sometimes can paint that picture, but that's why men and women have these conversations, let you know, bro, sis, it's okay to show emotion.
Yeah.
It's growth.
And I think there are women that can be like emotional vaults. Like I was one
Hmm.
for the longest time. So like though I guess the stereotype is that women are more emotional, for the longest time before
Hmm.
like before counseling and things like that, like I was kind of like an emotional, like didn't show a lot of
Really?
emotion. Yeah, and I mean like I didn't cry a whole lot. I didn't like I was very empathetic, but I didn't like to like feel certain emotions. So,
Mm.
um, like if I was upset, I didn't like to like feel that
Yeah.
and deal with that, or if I was like mad about something. And so I think what that caused is like I would always, the whole take the high road thing, and
Hmm.
and like always sit in the positive emotions, or
Yeah.
like try to push to the positive emotions instead of dealing with like I'm actually upset right now, or I'm
Yeah.
actually frustrated right now, or I'm mad right now. And so I wasn't like emotional in that sense. And I think there are women that do struggle in that way if they didn't grow up in a situation where they like learned how to like, okay, this is what I feel, like these are the emotions, like what is the best action forward, but like not denying that you like
Hmm.
actually feel something and that it's okay to like feel that
Yeah.
thing that you're feeling.
People that I'm close with, that I get to see the other side of them, I notice women that grew up in a household where the mom was the mom and the dad typically have that
Hmm.
because they have to be tough all the time because they're raising a kid or children.
Hmm.
And I've noticed that because they didn't get to see that from their mother. They didn't get to see that
Hmm.
emotional release from their mother. Sometimes they carry on because they don't know how to act of what they never saw. So um, I think, again, that's growth to me to be
Hmm.
able to provide a sign of communication that you're dealing with something.
Yeah.
And better yet, man, when you're pissed, it's okay to be like, man, I'm upset about that.
Hmm.
And I think, again, as a man, that's what we struggle with is
Hmm.
when I'm going to use Tina good, y'all. I promise Tina's cool, but I'm going to use her for example because I don't want to, she get mad at me. I'm going to be okay. But if Tina does something I don't like and I hold that in for month one and she does something again for month two and that carries on to month 10, month 11, she may do something that's not even a big thing and I
Hmm.
just explode. And
Hmm.
it's not because of the things she did at the 11th month. It's just because I wasn't able to communicate. So as a man, I think for sure it's something I can get better on.
Yeah, my counselor
100%.
has always told me like all your emotions are valid. It's just like how you like communicate them and how you deal with them
Yeah.
is like what you need to like learn to or like learn to figure out.
Yeah.
So like the emotion is emotion for real and it's a valid emotion. So like don't discount that, but like it's how you deal with them
Mm.
and how you respond to them
Yeah.
that changes based off of how healthy or not healthy you
That's real.
are.
That's real. That's real. And so before I kind of pivoted earlier, I do want to ask you something which you just kind of said. Okay,
Okay.
so I'm gonna bring it back up. And Faye, you never know, Princess may be watching. We still Instagram and Facebook friends, but we both explicitly explained how we experience certain anxieties. Have you ever noticed a pattern of how you, obviously you survived because you're here today,
Yeah.
but how you conquered or how do you conquer? Did you notice a pattern that you did that helped you that we may can say that can help someone else?
Um, like, yeah, I think so. I had to like first identify what my triggers were,
Hmm.
and so
Somebody
like,
comment that below. What was it? Identify your triggers.
yeah, my
Okay.
triggers, and like what I mean by that are like what are the things that like when I hear, see, or do them,
Mm-hmm.
like, you know, s- start to like make me feel riled up, I guess. And so I had to like know what those were, um, because so some situations are unavoidable. So like even though they're triggering, like I can't not step into them.
Yeah.
And so, um, but knowing the triggers helps me just like mentally prepare. I think for some of my anxiety like came from like taking my mind to the worst case scenario.
Mm.
And so I think one of the things I
Yeah.
had to do was like, well, two things is like, I'm the worst case scenario hasn't happened. I've just projected that
Yeah.
into the atmosphere and into the situation, but it has not like happened yet. And
Yeah.
so
That's
trying to
good.
train my mind to be like, but what's also like the best case scenario, and
Mm-hmm.
like these two options can like coexist. Um, And then, but the other thing is like, even if the worst case scenario happens,
Hmm.
like, will I still be okay at the end of that
I like that.
scenario? And I will. And so, in a lot of situations, pretty much all the situations, like I will. And so it's like understanding, like, but I will still be okay. And so just like, those are like little things that I can think of off the
That's
top of
good.
my head that are helpful for me, is like knowing what my mind is doing and like counteracting
I like that.
that.
I like that. That's well said. Well said. Um, and I'm definitely gonna be respectful of your time because we both got to train in a
Yeah,
little
oh my
bit.
gosh, this is fine.
Um, there's two more segments I want to go over,
Yeah.
right? But before we go past identity, I
Uh-huh.
mean, excuse me, not identity.
Anxiety.
Anxiety. Is there anything you want to ask me about
Oh
anxiety?
my gosh. Yeah. So, well, I want to ask you the same things. I know they're different for different people, and
What's that?
so I know that's a little bit of a cop out. But
Mm-mm.
like, what are some of the things that you feel like help you?
Almost definitely. So that sequence that I talked about then, when it hit me at 3 in the morning, I I thought the worst thoughts possible,
Uh huh.
right? And you create these illusions in your head that may never and probably will never come true. And not to give you a cliche response, guys, but mine's fell to my faith.
Mhm.
I, I just, by the grace of God, I believe God told me to go home.
Mhm.
It was 3 in the morning, and I promise I got to a point where I couldn't sleep. I would, it was just, my body was shaking. I'm thinking the worst thoughts, and all I heard was go home,
Mhm.
go home. So I packed up my bags,
Yeah.
3 in the morning. Tina thought I was crazy because she didn't know who was coming in the house at 3 in the morning. And I promised Margaret when I got home, I think I got in the guest room, and just peace fell on me.
Mhm.
And what I think God was showing me then, and this was my cheat code when I dealt with it, was not to put myself in a place of isolation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think when I put myself in a place of isolation, that's when, as I said earlier, I had no one to talk to, no one to turn to.
Yeah.
If I would have been around Tina or my dad or Milton or Shannon, I could have probably said how I felt,
Mhm.
and somebody could have gave me confirmation. Somebody could have gave me empowerment, encouragement, and sometimes it don't even need to be a word, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes I think at 3 in the morning, Tina didn't wake up and just come sit on the corner of the bed or the
Yeah.
boys.
Yeah.
I just their presence there, I think, calmed me, and I think that was by the grace of God that I was just at a place of vulnerability where I wasn't making so much commotion with my mouth and trying to do so much. I was just at a place where I can only hear.
Yeah.
And I think that really helped me to answer your question.
Yeah, I think, well, to echo off of that, I think isolation is a big one because I think w- our society is very individualistic,
Hmm.
especially like in America specifically, in a lot of Western
That's good.
cultures. And like if you do research slash have been to other countries, a lot of other countries live more communally.
Hmm.
So I'm first generation, so my parents are from Uganda,
I didn't know that.
and yeah,
That's dope.
surprise. Born and raised here, all that kind of stuff. But anyways, um, a lot of countries in like that part of the world live very communally, and so like
Hmm.
isolation is not a thing as much, and so many things are not like very individualized to like you and like your four walls.
Yeah.
And so I think the negative of like things like COVID and just life in general is like we've moved so much to like a very isolating, like I can do everything by myself,
Yeah.
like I can, live like all these different things. And why that may be true, like you can do a lot of things by yourself. I think community is like a lot of what we were
100%.
created for. And I think like the world was meant to operate in that way. And so I think sometimes the more
That's good. I like
isolated
that.
you are, I think sometimes the more these things are heightened, because you like don't have support.
Yeah.
And I think we were meant to like live in this like coexisting
I agree.
like world.
And,
And so,
and the thing too, and I'm gonna add this in because I cannot be alone when I said this. And if I'm not Margaret, you tell me.
okay.
Who has ever Googled what they're going through? Pain, like you feel something in your shoulder, or you start coughing and you start typing in Google stuff. Google is the worst doctor in the world,
Yeah.
man. And I think that's what we do sometimes. We look for validation through social media, They look through validation through YouTube or Google, and sometimes, man, they don't know you. So how are they going to give you something that's prescribed for you? So as you said, I think when you put yourself in different communities and cultures where people know you or not even know you, just bring good energy sometimes. Like I think of the gym. Personally, the gym has saved me in several different platforms or several different seasons of my life. And I didn't walk into a class and say, "Hey, guess what happened to me, guys?" And I had
Yeah.
strep throat. It was just when I got there, it was just like so many people that are striving and has strived and performed on a high level. When you're around that type of
Yeah.
culture and energy, it's so contagious. So even though I may have came in a dry place, I definitely didn't leave in a dry
Yeah.
place. So shout out to everybody that comes to Mean Green Gym. Um, all right, I'm gonna go to the screen real quick, and then we'll talk about. I'm gonna be honest. I don't like talking about depression, and the reason being because it's something that I see a lot, and I'm very careful of what I say because it's I see it a lot personally
Yeah.
with
Wait, is
people.
that still on?
Yeah,
Okay.
so
Okay.
the SIM card went out, so it's still good.
Okay.
Unless I get Jason, they'll give me another SIM card, but he's in another world. Jason's here, guys.
Okay.
Alex said, "Thanks for being vulnerable." Oh, y'all, oh, you all
Y'all are
right?
sweet.
Wendy, I'm huge. Excuse me. When I'm having anxious moments, I write and go back and read my thoughts and realize how crazy, man, my thoughts were. That is really good. Wow. Because I'm big on journaling, right? Even down to y'all food plans for those that come to the gym.
Yeah.
Um, that's something that I would recommend. I've never done that, but as Wendy said, I think sometimes when you see growth, right? Like I'm bragging on my friend Margaret, right? She's been having a great year physically, and I seen how she was able to reflect back on some of your measurements, and you was just like, man, I did that. And I would love for people to have that same thing if they dealt with anxiety. Like, what if I wrote the thoughts that I had in that hotel room and then probably shared it with
Yeah.
Tina? She'd probably been like, boy, you was tripping.
Yeah.
But look where you're at now.
Yeah.
So thank you, Wendy. Um, chill, my trigger is my mind too. Oh, this is Faye. Chill, my trigger is my mind too, so I have to be conscious of what I allow my mind to go.
Yeah.
100%. That's really good. Hey, Allie. All right. Depression. All right. Depression is not just, to me, depression is not just when someone passed or when you fail. Sometimes depression is when you're at a place that you've never seen before and you don't know how to operate in that environment. As a person that's involved in the fitness space with the gyms, the boot camps, a lot of people come in and say they want to lose weight or want to put on muscle, but a large majority, after I get to connect with them, they're dealing with some type of depression. And that's why I say I see that so much. So this is such a sensitive subject. Outside looking in, as a woman, what do you think? This is going to be a question for
Okay.
all women. I'm curious what everybody's going to say.
Okay.
But as a man, as a woman, what would you tell another man to be more cautious of when women are dealing with certain things? I'm not going to say no names, but I know she's on, like, sometimes men can be really insensitive about women when they're dealing with their cycles, right? And
Okay.
the person that's on know who I'm talking to, right? When that moment happens, I know she's dealing with it, and I always go give her a big hug. And her whole body language changes. Like, she looks at me like, little boy, you have no idea
Yeah.
what I'm dealing with. And I think sometimes for a dude just to kind of shove that off, a woman can really be dealing with some things. And outside looking in as a woman, what would you tell a guy to be more aware of with women dealing with, not saying that you've had it, but a certain type of depression?
Certain time. Yeah. So, I don't know if I've dealt with depression per se. Just more of like on the anxiety side, but I mean, some of it may bleed in. I've been in hard seasons. I don't know if this is hard to say, like, just men should do this. But
Mm-hmm.
I think dealing with someone going through hard thing, like something like that in general, like there has to be a little bit of an emotional awareness there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you know, that could, I mean, that could be any, like anyone, but yeah, I think there has to be just a little bit of an emotional awareness of, okay, or like self-awareness of like there's something a little bit off right
Mm-hmm.
now in this person's life. Um, so I just like can't come at this person or situation in the same way. I know for me, I think what is helpful for me, and it may be different from woman to woman. So please put your thoughts in there because I'm no pro.
And we would love to know.
But I think for me, like what would be just helpful is just like the consideration of like, hey, something as simple as like, hey, like, are you okay? Or like,
Mm-hmm.
what can I do? Like, what
Mm-hmm.
is, people have asked me before who I've had this conversation with, or even like guys have asked me before, like what is the best way to like communicate with you in this time? Like, what do you need from me?
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's helpful to me because I think,
Just ask.
yeah, just asking
Okay.
of like, hey, like, what do you need? Because also, like, people receive things very differently.
Mm.
Women are not all the same. We don't receive things all in the same ways. And so, like, what you may assume may be helpful to one person may not be helpful to
That's real.
them, and vice versa. And so, I think it's sometimes helpful to ask, like, what do you need from me? Like, what would be best in like how I communicate with
That's
you?
dope.
Like, how can I serve you in this time? But I do think that for you to know to even ask those questions, there has to be some self-awareness and emotional awareness on your part that is there.
That's real.
But I would love to hear other
Yeah.
thoughts. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Definitely. So, even to that fact, guys, if I would love to see, and you can ask Margaret or myself,
Yeah.
right, when it comes to being aware of depression and seeing someone to deal with it or is dealing with it. I'm gonna ask Margaret this question, but I would love to see if you guys have a response, and then we can kind of pick it up from there.
Yeah.
Have you ever known anybody that dealt with depression, and
Yes.
what was that like for you? What did Margaret do to potentially, I don't know, support or encourage? Do you
Yeah.
give space? Like what do you do?
Yeah. So, it was it's, it was slash is, a really good friend of mine. And I think it kind of got to a certain point where I was just like, I will come and help do normal everyday things
Mm-hmm.
because I think they did not know, like, she did not know what she needed.
Mm.
She was she's like in a point where like it's hard for her to even identify like what she needs.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so, I'm like speaking out of both sides of my mouth because I just told you all to ask the question. But then there are times where they're like, I think they're so in it, they just don't even know like what
Right.
they need or what they want. And so like for me, as a way to love her well, there are everyday things that like you do, like a normal person does every day that I could do to help relieve some things from her. And so, I've before like gone and helped like, I will, send you a meal. Like
Yeah.
or just say like, hey, I'm gonna send you a meal tonight. Like,
Just a little
d-
thing.
don't worry about it. Like, don't cook dinner. Like, I'm sending you dinner. I've known people to like go to people's house, and be like, hey, I'm coming over. Like, I'm gonna clean up. Like, you don't need to worry.
Yeah.
Um,
Has anybody that you done that for ever said after the fact, like thank you or
yeah.
what that meant
Oh
to you?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Like especially for like everyday things, I've never. This is just me. I've never had someone be like, no, it's okay, don't buy me dinner.
Right.
Like, I mean, there's people that are like, no, that are trying to be humble about it. But like, once I actually do it, they're like, no, it's okay.
Very
Or like,
grateful.
I had another friend who did this for one of our friends, but like, who just came by and just like washed their dishes, and just came and did that, and they didn't really like talk a whole lot 'cause she didn't really want to, but like, she just did those things. And the season of life when she was like moving out of that place, like, she was just like, I was just so grateful for the little
She
things. And
recognized.
so, I've had people with kids, or I know people with kids who struggled with depression as well, and
Postpartum is
yeah,
big.
and been like, hey, like, I'll take, um, you know, your little one for the day.
Yeah.
So I think just sometimes it's just little things, especially if they can't really identify like what would be helpful for
That's
them.
real. I like to point this out personally. But I know you didn't ask me this, but I'm gonna point it out.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm really
No,
bad
no,
at
no. You're doing perfect. Is so when George Floyd was murdered,
Uh-huh.
right? You got to remember we was in the middle of a pandemic. Everybody's at home. You
Yeah.
ain't seen family and friends in X amount of time.
Yeah.
And when you saw the way he was murdered,
Yeah.
it really put me in a funk.
Mhm.
Not from a standpoint of losing someone
Yeah.
personally or I failed at something in my career. It was more like, dang, like
Yeah.
that was a live human being. That was, come on, you can get in. That was a live human being. And I
Yeah.
remember that was at the point where all businesses, you can come, Miriam just walked in, y'all. She's here early. That was at a point where companies was writing something compassionate
Mhm.
about the George Floyd
Mhm.
and George Floyd murder. And I remember like sitting there like, okay, I have to do something for Mean Green. And part of me was like, dang, I was so upset at the way he was treated. And to this day, people still are treated.
Yeah.
And I remember having, obviously, Margaret knows me, but I have friends from all nationalities.
Yeah.
And I had, I'm not going to say his name, but a close friend of mine, a white guy, and he was like, bro, you want to talk?
Mhm.
Like, he didn't have to do that.
Mhm.
And I was like, nah, bro, I'm good. I'm Chris.
Yeah.
No, I'm good. I'm awesome. And he's like, no, man, let's talk because it may be something I can answer. Or
Mhm.
maybe I want to be more aware of the way that you see things or your culture see
Mhm.
things. And it really, I'm not going to say it made me happy about the situation, but it made me release tension
Mhm.
and that funk that I was in because of someone having the awareness of like, man, that was wrong.
Mhm.
And, I just thought that was really important that from man to man, or whether it could have been a woman, to just communicate.
Mhm.
And as you just mentioned earlier from what you were saying, someone going over to communicate, just to talk or to
Mhm.
wash dishes, I think those things really help for anybody that's dealt with or
Mhm.
deals with depression. So yeah, that was a tough moment.
Yeah.
That was tough. Hold on. Let's take a pause. Let's go somewhere. Let's see if anybody asks anything. Agreed, Margaret. Self-awareness, emotional maturity, and empathy. Yup. Great perspective, Margaret. People like Margaret.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, winning, no doubt. As Shanna says, love. So let me ask you this, and then we're going into identity. What time we got? Cool. And then we're going to identity.
Uh-huh.
But before I go into identity,
Uh-huh.
do you have any questions about anything with depression to the audience or to me?
Yeah, so I think so like we talked about like these are things you can do. But I do think I'll ask a question specifically for men. But I do think sometimes for men in particular, I know in my family it's like really hard. And we kind of talked about this, but like why is vulnerability so hard? Like and I know you said like there's the I don't wanna be weak aspect. But I don't know. I just want to like, is like that kind of the overarching or, is there more to that? Like, is there more to men being so dismissive sometimes, not all men, about just like being honest and vulnerable about like what is
I
going
think
on?
part of it is the barbarian in the man. The
Yeah.
man wants to be, or Chris wants to be, the guy that helps. Chris wants to be the crutch for you. Chris wants to be the one that has the answer for you. And I think through life, I'm learning, and I have experience. It's okay not to have the answer. It's okay to say, Margaret, I don't know, sis.
Yeah.
But I have not always been that way. It's been times where it was difficult for me to stand for something because I was going through something because I wanted to stand for everybody else.
Yeah.
I'm talking about my mother specifically
Yeah.
when I lost her. Like, I wanted to be there for so many people that also lost her, but I felt as the man, I
Yeah.
couldn't show that I couldn't do it for myself.
Yeah.
And I think we're creatures of habitat. I think the way you do one thing is the way you do most. And I think that carries on into your career. I think that carries on into your relationship. Jason, you help me out a little bit? I think that carries on to so many different things that we all deal with. And I believe that for me to give you the most authentic answer, I think we all work to be better at something that we don't know, but you got to be honest with what you don't know.
Yeah. And I think that makes you relatable. I ask that because I think men do this a lot, but I think a lot of people like try to play superhero in the sense of like,
Hmm.
I want to play superhero and protect these people and love these people well. But I think the detriment is that is like inevitably, I mean, if you are a living human, you're going to go through things or multiple things at any given time in your life. And so, I'm a huge about like people sharing their stories because you just become more relatable.
Yeah.
I think for me, the people that I inspire most have been the most, or the people that inspire me the most.
Hmm.
They look up to the most, have been some of the most like vulnerable and authentic people to me because I actually feel like,
Mm.
oh, like I've been at that place and now I see you're at this
It's
place and so
relatable.
therefore I can get there. When you like are not that, then you
That's a great example.
just seem like a off, not off, but like a person that's
Yeah.
not attainable or
Yeah.
like your life is not
Yeah.
attainable.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so that's what I would say.
That's like training with Wonder Woman or Superman. You know, how intimidated would it be, or
Yeah.
how intimidating would it be to work out with Superman?
Yeah.
Like you would never be able to fly,
Yeah.
right? But I think too, Margaret, to answer or to add into the answer is, I think, and I hope some men are on here live. I believe sometimes men can speak up and show vulnerability, and then it's taken
Yes.
the wrong way.
Yes. 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 Yes.
You
yes,
know,
yes, 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 yes,
and I don't want to give an example, but I have to, right? If a man, great example, man, I'm not gonna say these names because I don't know if they're still connected with me,
yes.
but I remember a guy I went to school with. We were in middle school, and the kid fell. It was a hard fall. Like we were playing football, and I'm older than you.
Yeah.
In my era, we played concrete football, and we tackled on the sidelines of the grass.
Yeah.
But the kid got tackled, but it was no grass. So
Yeah.
he skinned everything up, and he got up and he was crying.
Yeah.
Like who wouldn't cry in that moment, right?
Yeah.
But all the kids there like brutally just made fun of him.
Yeah.
You this, you that, you gonna be this, you that. So that had to
Yeah.
like traumatize him a little
Yeah.
bit. So I'm pretty sure that as he got older, when he wanted to cry or show emotion again, that brain that took him back to that newer association of him doing that probably permitted him to show emotion. So I did want to point that out. I believe that some men act that way because they probably did show emotion, and somebody could have said or done something to them to make them feel
Yeah.
that way.
I mean, there's always a risk to vulnerability, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, that's just like par for the course because not everyone in life is emotionally aware and
Yeah.
self-aware enough to like be able to handle people's vulnerability. And I think there is some discernment in vulnerability too of like, who you're with and who you give that to. But I think
You good, Miriam?
like
Everybody's hiding. We got a couple people coming in the gym, so they all kind of like tiptoeing. They don't want to be in the
yeah,
camera.
yeah, I think because I've been hurt by vulnerability, like being vulnerable and it's backfired on me and
Mhm.
like and yeah, and so but I've also seen like super growth
100%.
and like deeper connections with it. And
100%.
so I'm like, yeah, the risk hurts and there are some risks and sometimes it will backfire, but like for the times that it doesn't, I personally think it trumps those
Yeah.
situations because the relationships that come from like the beauty of that is like really, really cool. And that can be romantically, that can be friendship wise, like just like the connections that come with
I
that
love that.
is cool. So
Y'all give her some snaps and claps around here.
gotta take risks.
Got to. Well, I think we have to align this with identity.
Okay.
Okay, so let's take it there.
Yes.
Hold on. Got a couple of responses, and we'll kind of go into them. Mental health, depression. In some cases, you don't want to help or don't know how to ask for help.
Yeah.
The one problem with men, when you ask them, is everything okay? They automatically go to the typical response, I'm good. So how do you get them to open up with, something is up with them? That's a great question, Wendy. So we're not going to go into identity. We'll touch that real quick, and I'll answer that as a guy.
You
I
got
think
it.
I think part of it too, Wendy, is men are so conditioned to say I'm good, I got it. Part of it too is just showing consistency. I think for Tina, poor Tina, y'all pray for her, man. There are things that it probably took months or years for me to let my guard down, potentially because of a past event. But I think the one thing that worked with Chris was consistency of I'm not going nowhere. Like I'm here. I'm gonna help. If you don't let me help, I'm gonna figure out some way to help.
Yeah.
And specifically with my mother, I think that's the worst question to ask anybody in the world is when they're going through grief is to ask you, everything good? That's like the worst thing to ask. And I think conditionally, I'm good, I'm okay. But just to be there, like Margaret said, coming over, she would fold my clothes, cook some food, bring some food by. And I just seen that she was just there. So I think from a woman to a man or man to man, if the answer is always I'm good, just show your presence. And I think showing your presence and being consistent, I believe a man always gets a feel of like, you know
Yeah.
what, that's
Even in
that's
basic
real.
things, because there's going to be a real reality.
A hundred
Like when
percent.
people are grieving, they just don't know what to say.
100%.
So I just kind of sometimes go back to like, what are basic everyday things that they do? They eat. So like, hey, like I'm going to send you dinner
Yeah.
today,
You
you
want to? You
know?
want to? The second time she said that about sending food, she need to hook a brother up. She need to hook a brother up. But no, I think that was a great question. Trauma plays a huge factor in
Yes.
development, and because of those risks, is why vulnerability is most contagious thing. The
Yeah.
fact that you are willing to take the risk demonstrates the greatest strength. Yeah. So, I have a quote that I live by. It says, is your next risk worth the reward?" And what I mean by that, when I make decisions, whether it's for business, for my family, anything, it's gonna sometimes involve the risk. But if the reward is worth it, I'm willing to take the risk.
Yeah.
If the reward is not worth it, then I'm not gonna take the risk. So I think that that's a great way to
Yeah.
kind of live by. So use sports to get a man to open up and be vulnerable. You know what, Jay? To be honest, I think as a man, my biggest thing let me back up, and then we're gonna go to identity. I promise. One of the ways that I open up, honestly, is through my faith. Just to be honest, like I can go back and forth with Jay Mill. We can talk about everything, and I'm good. I'm not sick. I'm not hurt. My back is good. But you get me at a place of surrender. When I'm in my faith, that's my place of surrender. That's
Yeah.
my place of peace and joy. And then I think that's why I seek more guidance at that moment is because I'm not putting on any makeup. And I think as a man, we do not literally put on makeup,
Yeah.
but we put on these clothes and these garments to cover up the way we
Vault.
really feel, right?
You
The
become
vault.
a vault.
Yeah. And I think that's the growth that us men, we have to take, bro, right? Where if a woman or a parent or a child or whoever wants to help you grow, there's no way you grow with that vault. And you got to be willing to take it off and take that risk.
Yeah.
But I believe it's worth definitely the reward.
Yep.
You want to try this? Identity?
We can try. What time is it?
All right, identity. We're going to go right into
In
this
10
one real
minutes.
quick.
We can do it in 10 minutes.
Identity. I think the reason why I wanted to line personally identity up with
Anxiety.
anxiety and depression is
Uh-huh.
because knowing who you are truly puts you in a position to really conquer the unthinkable, to make possible out of impossible. And I'm gonna ask Margaret a quick question, and then if she has one, she can ask me, and then we'll wrap it up. Is that a deal?
Deal.
Identity. What do you think is the hardest thing for a woman to figure out when it comes to her identity?
Oh, wow. That's a loaded question.
It was supposed to be a quick one, Chris.
Yeah. The hardest thing to figure out, I think, I, so I, okay, let me backtrack in my brain. I think we think of identity sometimes as all the different things we like do. Like, so I am like a mom, I am a working professional, I am a this, I am a that. And so I think sometimes when we have all these things that we do and we identify as all these things that we do, then it becomes kind of like complicated. And just
That's
a
good.
lot to understand, like, but who am I as Margaret? Does that make sense?
100%.
And I think, yeah, this is a loaded question. It's hard for me to explain, but
Well,
yeah,
keep it right there. With the things that women have the opportunity to provide, do you think that it's hard to get your passion and purpose completed versus what you do for people? And what I mean by that, if you're a mother,
yeah,
but your passion is to paint,
yes.
do you believe it's hard to kind of find what you should be doing because you're serving other people so many times?
Yeah, I think for me it is. You know, I think my natural inclination is like, what can I do for other people? And so, you know, for a long time in my life, like identified as like, this is what I am. I guess this is what I'm trying to say. Like, this is what I am for this person. This is what I
Mm-hmm.
am for this person. So to your point, like, this is what I am for my kids. But then like, who am I? Like,
Mm.
what do I love?
What gives you joy?
What gives like me joy, and like what defines my worth.
Yeah.
You know, and you talked about faith a lot, and that for me has had to be a center, because that like, me as Margaret, I am worthy because I am a living, breathing human being.
Yeah,
And
man.
like, that in and of itself makes me worthy as a person, because I think when I start
That's
to
good.
identify based off of like what I do for other people,
That's
when
good.
I like fail at those things, or they think I fail at those things, then like I lose my identity. But when I am just like, regardless of how well I do these things, I am still worthy, or like Jesus still loves me, like I am still in good standing
I
there.
love that.
Like,
That's your center.
that helps me do things for others, or just do anything without any inhibition that my identity is lost if I don't do it
I
well,
love it.
or my identity is lost if I fail at that
I
goal, or
love it.
my identity. So I think it's very hard for like us to identify based off of, people do it like based off of just what, like the things we do,
Mm-hmm.
or the things we do for other people, because those are going to fluctuate,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes sometimes you're going to fail at those things.
Yeah.
And if everything is wrapped up in that, then like your whole world falls apart
Mm.
when those things fail. But like, you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
100%.
And so I think for
I love that.
me, I've had to find like, I can't be completely over like consumed by those things.
I
Like,
love
I
it.
have to have something else that is a center of gravity for
I
me.
love it.
And so I don't know
Well said.
if that makes sense.
Well said. No, I love it. I love it. I think
Um,
that hit every nail on the head. I see we have one more, but before I go to that one, do you have a question when it comes to identity?
I'm gonna do the cliche thing and just throw back the question you asked me, but like, but in a
I don't even
different
remember
way.
the question.
A different day, like, okay, how do you think people define identity societally today?
Mm-hmm.
One question: do you agree with do you agree with that? Like, do you agree with that? And two, like, how would you define identity? Like,
Okay, remember part two. I answer one and bring back two.
okay,
Deal. I think number one, I don't agree with it. Man, one of the toughest things, I haven't done it since COVID. Not that the pandemic's over, but
yeah,
pre-pandemic, I used to go speak to certain schools about bullying,
mm-hmm.
and social media plays such a huge role in kids' life, but also in
Yeah,
adults' life. And I think a lot of people now are quick to go to somebody's social media to see what type of post they post, and
who I can be.
because they
Yeah,
posted what they post or didn't post what they post, they create this identity and this image of who this person is. And I think that's so false, because a lot of people are here, people's expectation of opinion of them, and then they'll live off people's expectation
mm-hmm.
and opinion. And for me, if I've ever lived off of what people thought I was, I would never be mean green or anything else that I will achieve in the future. And to give you a great example, if I go back to my faith again, Jesus was mentioned as a carpenter,
Yeah,
not the savior.
yeah,
So what if he lived and progressed as a carpenter?
yeah,
That's just unfair. And I think that when it comes to identity, I'm really big into it, Margaret, because I believe men build identity. I look at my little boys and every step they take, I try not to make every step they take a life learned lesson, but I know my reaction in the words and the things they see me do is going to build the identity of them as, kids, which will be men one day. But I just firmly believe that the way that people live off people's opinion and expectation based upon social media or even their past. Like nobody's perfect. So somebody can make a mistake. True story, I got arrested when I was 13. So say when I was 13, I got arrested and now I'm 37. What if everybody looked at me from that day forward, jailbird?
Yeah.
You did this, you did that. And like I will be living my life based upon something I'm not proud of, but it was my past. That doesn't mean it's my future. So that was the part one of your answer. And part two was
Now I've even forgotten because my memory is very minimal. So
I think it was a response question that I asked you, and I asked you. I don't remember, y'all. Did they remember?
I was, and I probably didn't ask the question
Okay.
well, so I'm
Well,
sorry. But to go off of something that you said, I think it's just important to like for people that are struggling or like what is it? What's the word I'm trying to look for that have been approval addicts in their past. That is like so much of my story growing up and like just like seeking the approval of other people. So for those people,
Yeah, man.
I'm talking to you, like really just like understanding like who are you created to be and like what is like speaking words of life over yourself of like
100%.
who you are and like who God has created you to be, and then like living in that realm so that even if
I like
you're
that,
like,
Margaret.
even if you fail someone else, or you like make a mistake or what have you, like, you know that like
I like that.
that that doesn't define you. And I feel like that's such a cliche response, but I just know I've struggled with that for a long time and
Yeah.
like wanting people to like me and wanting people to think I'm awesome. And so that dictates how I like move through different spaces and how I like interact with certain people and just being like confident in my truth and like my personality.
Yeah.
Like, I think, like sometimes my personality can be a lot, I feel like. And so, but being okay with like, this is who I'm created to be. And like
That's
that,
Margaret.
and that's Margaret. And like, that's
Yeah.
okay. And I think society's kind of like moving in the direction of like, all that kind of
I
things.
think that's the realest thing that was said today. Because to add on, and we go to those last two and we get out of here, is you also can be the worst critic to yourself,
Yeah.
right? You put yourself sometimes in a position where everybody keep walking in. Jason can let him in though. He's keeping everybody outside. Sometimes you put yourself in a prison based upon what you think of yourself, and
Yeah.
sometimes the things we think of ourselves is not even the truth, and we're way better or stronger or we're way more confident than
Yeah.
sometimes we call ourselves to be. So I'm glad you said that.
I'm like getting hot.
Getting hot. All right, let's finish with here, okay? Faye, what about the other side of the cultural emotional expectation coin and the expectation of the strong black woman that, ooh, this is going to be loaded.
Okay.
That's going to be loaded. That you can let people in? You can let people in?
Oh, okay.
Oh, no, she can't charge her phone. All right, dehumanizing weight is a catalyst of issue that anxiety and depression. That's a loaded one, Faye.
So she said being the strong person,
Yeah.
like having to be strong.
And as a black woman, she was saying.
Yeah, I think that's pretty difficult. I don't even have an answer for that, I'll be honest, because I think there is this pressure as a black woman in particular, especially in certain
You next.
especially in certain situations, like professional situations, but just in life, that like we have to carry everything,
That's real.
and just like be okay with things and like, code switch and like just do all these things all
Yeah.
the time. And there's not as much space for vulnerability. And I agree with Faye because I think even what hindered me so much for so long of even like going into counseling or just being like, I can't do this or saying no to things was like
That's another one.
societal expectation of like,
That's real.
I have to like fight all the time. And I can't, and I like don't have the capacity to fight all the time. Like I
lot.
just don't have the strength to
That's
do
a
that.
lot.
Like I'm tired and I don't want to do that. And I just don't want to be strong all the time. And I think that's a lot to ask of somebody, to be like strong,
Superwoman.
a superwoman all the time, because we're human. Like we are not created to be superheroes. Like
100%.
we can't actually do that well all the time. And so,
Well said.
yeah. So
That's a podcast in its own.
yeah. So Faye, I don't have an answer, or I mean,
I think you did put a good answer.
but it is hard. The only thing that like I feel like I've tried to do is just like be open to that reality of like I'm weak and sometimes and I can't do everything, and that's okay.
That's okay. That's what I was gonna say.
And
that's
I'm a
okay.
human. I'm a human, so
And that's okay, too.
And that's okay. You know, like it is what it is.
I love it. I love it. I love it. All right, I skipped somebody's question. So what's up, Taylor? The struggle with identity is confusing it with purpose.
Mm-hmm.
Goodness.
That's a whole nother.
That's a whole nother one
that's
too.
like
I'm gonna get Taylor on.
Yeah,
there.
get Taylor to come and talk about that.
So that's a deal. If we're gonna get Taylor on.
Yeah, because identity and purpose are not the same thing.
100%.
And so.
100%. Identity and purpose is so different.
They are different.
For good reason.
Yeah.
And
that's a loaded
we'll
question.
Get her on.
Yeah.
We'll get her on.
Taylor, you're coming next.
You're coming next. Well, guys and girls, Badass Bobby said something about mental health, and I just want to read it, and then we'll get out of here. Mental health, depression in some cases, you don't want to help or don't know how to ask for help. The one problem with men when we ask
You read this one.
Did I read this one?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't
We talked about it.
Okay, cool. I felt bad when I seen it. All right, well, guys, Margaret, that was an hour and 10 minutes. That felt like,
oh my gosh,
like 20 minutes.
And I'm still I'm literally no expert. I don't have a psychology degree, so take what I say with a grain of salt.
You know what? Because we had the opportunity to talk, I think, Margaret, that, again, the hope, the prayers that somebody come across this and it inspires them to open up, to communicate from man to woman, from woman to man, or man to man, woman to woman. And I believe life is just more vibrant when you can communicate, especially with people that you trust.
Yeah.
And I'm a big person or a big believer that closed mouths don't get fed.
Mm-hmm.
And it's okay to ask the right question.
Yeah.
And I believe that's how you get answers.
Yes.
So I'll leave with that unless you got something else you want to add in.
Nope. I'm a good listener if you want to talk.
Yeah. Margaret's the woman. I want to talk to her in this workout we're about to do.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, gosh.
Okay. Bye, friends.
But, guys, we love you. Thank you for tuning in. Hey, next week, we're going to have my friend Tatiana. She owns a brand called Fit with Curves. If you haven't heard about it,
cool.
She's launching some cool things. I've been knowing her in the fitness space over 10 years, I want to say. So, y'all check out next Wednesday. Thank you. Subscribe to our channel. Turn on the notifications. And we see you guys soon. Take care.